Hi, my name is Sean Myers, and I am a distance master's student in environmental engineering. I will be presenting today on microbiologist Carl Woe's paper titled Bacteria Evolution. This is Environmental Engineering 6601, Fall Semester 19. On screen is our agenda today. We're going to start with a short history on Carl Woe's, introduce his paper, and give a big picture perspective on it, in particular how microbiology and bacteria evolution correlate, and then we're going to finish up with some closing thoughts. Carl Woese was an influential microbiologist. He is credited with revolutionizing our understanding of evolutionary and microbiology. Professor at the University of Illinois Champaign, where he conducted most of his research. He is distinguished within the scientific community while achieving such awards as the Leo Windhoek Medal. His major contributions follow next. Genetic work started in the early 1950s. This led him to join the University of Illinois in his pursuit of gene sequencing. Phylogenetic taxonomy via amino acid sequencing allowed him to discover a third form of life, the archaebacteria. Horizontal gene transfer was significant in proving that primary cells all evolved from some ancestral state in the RNA world. Let's transition into the actual paper published by Woese in 1987 titled Bacteria Evolution. This paper is essentially a brain dump of his studies and served as a sequel to his first published study where he discovered archaebacteria in 1977. My presentation will focus on the purpose of his paper and not necessarily the material. So why do we care? And microbiology in particular for this question. Microbiology has a huge influence over the listed areas, that is, genetics, medicine, and biotechnology, all from the concept of bacterial evolution. The key point to all this is best summed in a direct quote from Woese in his paper. The most profound and lasting effect will be on the perception of evolution and its relationship to the rest of biology. Woese was essentially changing history. Final point to make to introduce his paper is why is bacteria evolution a thing in 1987 and not before? Simply put, the concept and technology just didn't exist. Phylogenetic relationships in bacteria require sequencing of nucleic acids, which was incredibly time-consuming and difficult. Now let's have a quick review of the history of microbiology to better understand the underlying principles. No one cared about bacteria evolution because of the difficulty and lack of technology, plus the common acceptance that we already knew everything there was. Remember, bacteria taxonomy classification was done phylogenetically, which is really only good on things we can easily see, such as plants and animals. The classical method of bacteria classification was morphological, but this method vastly ignored the bacteria's evolutionary relationships. To see these additional relationships required study at the amino acid level. Microbiologists at the time did not see a reason to pursue this study, and thus microbiology was devoid of evolution. However, after Woe's 1977 publication, despite its very slow start and level of acceptance, came the advancement in gene sequencing. Microbiologists were able to document the phylogenetic connections of bacteria, and thus start to see the vast amount of evolutionary relationships from billions of years of microbial history, which in turn greatly increased our understanding of the relationships between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. To sum this history lesson up, let's look at the three main takeaways. Microbiology was now in the forefront of study within the biology community. The potential knowledge gain just increased by at least a magnitude of 10 for evolution due to the timeline being increased. And finally, the advancement in the universal ancestor, which is completely rewritten when Woese published his findings on archaebacteria. So what does it all mean? Simply put, let's look at another direct quote from Woese in his paper. The study of bacteria evolutionary relationships is central to the historical account of life on this planet. The impact of this revolution was profound in the biology community and the world as a whole. I next want to focus on what Woese attributes to the classic and incorrect understanding of evolutionary biology. He does this by categorizing three key reasons why bacteria evolution was generally ignored, and why a huge prejudice existed towards any concept of change from the current dogma. The old idea that only two types of cells existed, the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic. This was a classic definition of the phylogenetic classification. Eukaryotes had a true nucleus, and everything without a nucleus must be prokaryote. Rather, the negative definition of prokaryotes, and a definition that wouldn't be challenged until the discovery of archaebacteria. Next is the concept of the apparent ocean scenario. The The origin of life started in a rich biochemical soup that was the oceans of the earth. Compounds developed and eventually became prokaryotic, pro meaning before. Eukaryotes then evolved from the prokaryotes over time. The final point is Darwin's warm little pond. Widely accepted explanation of how life started from a simple letter that Darwin wrote to a colleague where Darwin suggested, what if life started in a warm little pond on land where a protein just happened to form by chance? Wallace then proceeds to dive into his conclusions from his research in the remaining sections of his paper, Bacterial Evolution. He provides examples and information on microbiology concepts that are commonplace in today's understanding. Listed are just some of the key points that Wallace investigates, which are centered around the idea that bacterial evolution is in fact a substantial continuing phenomena that must be understood to fully grasp our history as multicellular organisms on Earth. Carnot's influence on microbiology is colossal. He was solely responsible for the entire accepted understanding of microbial evolution being totally rewritten. Gene sequencing would give rise to a much deeper understanding of phylogenetic and bacterial relationships, and the newly corrected concept of the universal ancestor thanks to his discovery of Archaebacteria. It is hard to believe that the concepts laid out in a paper published in 1987, barely 30 years ago, would have such a profound influence in the world and our understanding of the origins and development of life. Thanks for listening and have a great day.